So over the last few weeks I've received a lot of comments on my video from people shooting micro four thirds at high ISOs. So there's probably some perception that micro four thirds and low light may look a little bit like this. And then there are probably those people out there that think micro four thirds in low light looks a little bit like this. But the reality is it looks a little bit more like this. So let's go take some high ISO photos with my Olympus E-M1 Mark II.
Oh, Lena, she's got eyes that shine through the thick of the evening. I love her till the break of day, till the morning moon is fading. Now the Delta sun is on the rise.
So all of the photos that you've just seen were taken shortly after sunset on my walk down to Spurn Point. It was all shot at ISO 1600 and there was all of them handheld. So ISO 1600 is where we're going to start with for tonight's video. So just behind me, you're not going to be able to see it because it's a bit dark now, is the Lighthouse at Spurn Point. So I'll set up a composition on the E-M1 Mark II. So let's take a photograph. So we're f3.2, 1.3 seconds and still ISO 1600. So let's get our eye in and here's the first photograph. So I've come for a little bit more of a walk and I think I found a photograph that might work really quite nicely. There are two telegraph poles and the telegraph poles and the wiring above it really kind of frame the lighthouse quite well. Now I'm using an ultra wide lens here. It's going to be a 6mm micro four thirds lens, which for you full frame people is a 12mm equivalent field of view. There's going to be some distortion here, but I think it might work quite well. Now we're still at ISO 1600, so on the high ISO side of things, we're still a little bit on the low end, but I just thought, while there's still a little bit of ambient light about, there's no harm in keeping it as low as possible. But what I have done is I've thrown a lens on that has a maximum aperture of f2, so we're letting just a little bit more of the ambient light in there, which should hopefully help with a little bit of noise. So we're f2, 4.5 seconds, and ISO 1600. Here's a photograph of the lighthouse just framed by a couple of telegraph poles. So I've moved round to the other side of Spurn Point this time and we're facing the River Humber where there is still a little bit of an ambient glow from sunset. There's just a little slither of orange light on the horizon. I thought I might just throw a little bit of colour in the sky and make something look a little bit different. But we're also going to do something else with this photograph. We're going to light paint the foreground. So I have my mobile phone here with the torch shined on and there is a little rock wall just in front of me, and the idea here is just to illuminate the rock wall using the torch on my mobile phone. So we're at f5, 2.5 seconds and we're still at ISO 1600. What I'm going to do is a 2-second countdown timer and then I'm just going to wave my mobile phone with the light in the air for the duration of the photograph. Here it is. So I've just done a dreaded ISO test. So we started off at 16, then went to 3200 and then we've gone to 6400. So a stop gained every single time. On the back of the camera, I didn't really notice too much of a difference in image quality degradation. You know what I mean. But I did notice, however, was a slight colour cast change of all three ISOs. The first one, taken at ISO 1600, to my eye on the back of the camera, there appears to be a little bit of a warm cast to the image. And as we increase the ISO by one stop to 3200, it seemed to shift a little bit more towards the green. And again, when we shifted up another stop towards 6400, it seemed to take on more of a magenta cast. Now, I noticed the foreground remained fairly sharp and fairly usable throughout all three images. It was only really in the background towards the lighthouse and the sky where I found the image quality really did drop off just a little bit. But again, not enough for me to be overly concerned and bin the images and never use them, which has surprised me because I've never really shot this camera anything really above, I don't know, maybe 800 ISO. I don't tend to shoot at night all that often, so high ISO isn't something that I tend to play with. So the fact that the 3 images that I took when I saw them on the back of the camera looked very similar, albeit with a slightly odd colour cast, I was quite surprised, so there we are. Alright, so before we go ahead and take this next photograph, one of you in a community post comments asked for a picture of the moon rising above the sea. So this is about the best I could do because the moon was a lot brighter than the foreground. Looks kind of like a bit of a weird sunrise. I quite liked the way the moon was reflecting off the water, but there we go. So I've managed to find a final subject. It is the lighthouse once again, but we're going to shoot a post with a really big bit of netting on the front of it, and that's going to give me a really nice foreground interest, I hope. And once again, we're going to light paint with the torch on my mobile phone. So I'll move you around, we'll have a look at the composition, and we'll take the photograph. So this is the composition set up on the back of the camera. If I don't go near the EVF, you'll be able to see. So down here is the post with the netting on, and over here we have the lighthouse. Now, I don't know how well this is going to come across in the video, but if you look at the whites of the lighthouse, the rising moon is just adding a very, very slight orange tint to things, and I quite like the look of that. We're also getting a few little stars in the background, and there's also a little bit of low cloud just starting to blow across, so the sky is hopefully going to look a little bit more interesting. So let's go ahead and take this final photograph. So once again, I have my mobile phone, my trusty torch is going to illuminate the foreground, although I'm fairly certain at this point you can see how this works. I've already taken the photograph because obviously the light from this would blur it out, but let's not break the fourth wall, and here we go. So it is a 10-second exposure, f4.5 and ISO 1600. We set the 2-second timer going, and we just wave the torch around in the air like so, until you think that you've shined enough light on the foreground, and that hopefully gives you some nice illumination and a little bit of depth to the photograph. That looks really exposed, but here's the proper one. So thank you very much for watching today's video, just using my Olympus E-M1 Mark II and shooting at some relatively high ISOs, and I've hoped that I've proved that the smaller sensor in these things, you can still go out at night and in low light and get some reasonably nice photographs. Now, I'm not going to lie, if you had a larger sensor, you're going to have crisper, cleaner images, but as far as I can see, I've seen nothing that will put me off using this camera over and over again at night time. So thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy today's video, please do give it a like and a thumbs up and all that jazz. It really does help the video and brings new viewers to see my content. And if you liked it more than that, as usual, there is a subscribe button below me. You can press that and see more nonsense from myself every single week. So until the next time, I'm going to love you and leave you and say peace and goodbye.